All right, starting another build. This one's for a friend who watched our cats. Just gonna make her a cutting board. This is literally all scrap wood and some tight bond that I have left over. Obviously it's 3. But this is a scrap cut off of walnut that I had that was about this big and a few feet long. So I cut it into 6 strips. I'll glue these together in pairs of 2, and then I can make it all uniform. I have a small chunk of purple heart here, a small chunk of padauk, another small chunk of maple, and quite a bit of birch. So the majority of this is going to be birch. I have some cherry too that I might throw in there if I need more wood, but we'll see. But that's where I'm at so far. I got to get over to the table saw and make some strips, but first I got to get these gluing together, just in sets of 2, so I'll have some thickness to this thing. Yeah, should be fun. All right, getting those few chunks of walnut I have glued up. I'm just gluing 3 out of the 6. And then I'll just stick them in the clamps here and wind them tight. It'll be pretty easy. Right, important tip, when you're trying to cut a really thin piece, don't let the push stick hit the blade. This thing just blew right in half. It sent it flying back there. I'm fine. I mean, it was actually in my hand and it just kind of ripped it out of it, but nothing broke in, everything still works. But yeah, broke it right in half. Pretty clean break. That's where it nicked the blade there and it just snapped that thing. Oh yeah, that has never happened to me before. That was actually pretty scary. So yeah. Definitely don't try to cut really thin with a cheap plastic push stick that comes with your table saw. So I'm gluing up all the birch and cherry right now, and I'll let that sit overnight. Then I'll have to cut it all up again tomorrow and put the padauk, purple heart, walnut, all that good stuff in there. I definitely use way too much glue almost every time I glue something up, but can always take some off, can't add more. I say that in every video, but... Okay, this time I think I may have actually used too much glue. But whatever, it'll just squeeze out. But it's definitely on there thick. I want to make sure I got every little inch here that needs it. So yeah, that should seal up pretty well, I think. I'm going to go ahead and flip them up. I don't really have a way to set this so you can see that. Well, maybe right there. Okay, good enough. I'll get it clamped and wipe the excess. I'm just doing 3 on here. That is a really lot of glue. Yeah, I definitely used too much. But at least I know I got everything. I should be able to wipe most of it. I just hate running stuff that's that covered with glue through the planer. That's actually why I left that end longer and this end longer, so I can run it through the planer. And then I can just cut it all to even length after. Got the walnut out of clamps. Obviously you see the glue lines. I just take this little plane and scrape the glue off. Ends up looking kind of like that. Then I got to cut it to size on here, but you know, it gets a flat enough surface for me to glue up again. But yeah, I'm gonna go through and do that real quick, and then I gotta cut these to 1 3/8 as well. So I've got it laid out the way I want it. Got the Paduke, the walnut, Purple Heart. Problem is when I tighten this, it tends to bow. Without it being tight, it's fine, but I don't know if it's my miter saw or what, but see these little gaps here? It's making it bow a little bit. So I don't know. Probably be okay, but I don't know. We'll figure it out. I may change this up a little bit too. I considered doing something like this. Something kind of like that, but the Purple Heart next to the walnut is just a lot of dark wood right next to each other. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I might leave it this way. I don't know. I haven't really decided. I'm going to clamp it up though and get it at least gluing. Worst case scenario, I've got a bunch of scrap melamine. I can do a sled for my planer when I run it through, and that'll flatten it out. All right, it's the next day. I think it got too cold in here last night. When I was taking this out of clamps, and this is a full 18 hours later, it separated right here. I already cleaned the glue off of it. When I shut the heat off last night and left the shop, it was about 60 in here. But the temperature did get down into the 20s last night. So even with all that time, I'm assuming it didn't have enough time to really, or enough temperature to really cure correctly. So I've got to re-glue that seam and then really give this some time to just sit. So I don't think it's going to be done today, unfortunately. But yeah, I just cleaned it all up with some water, some mineral spirit, some towels, all that good stuff. And I'm just going to re-glue it, reclamp it, and I'll let it sit here for a bit. The heat is running, so I know it'll get relatively warm in here today because the sun's out. We're already up to about 50. That should be warm enough for the glue to work, so yeah. All right, so because this isn't perfectly flat, as you can see, I'm gonna make a flattening sled for when I run this through my planer. I'm pretty sure I have a hot glue gun kicking around somewhere. But basically you just take a flat piece of wood, put some wedges under the high side, like that. Like I'll put a wedge under each corner there and hot glue it down in a few locations and slide it through the planer until one side's flat. Then do the other on the opposite side. This still has to dry a little bit longer because I had to re-glue that seam this morning. That was this one here, which it is mostly dry, but not quite. It's still pretty cold out here, so I'm actually going to wait until tomorrow to do that. But yeah, I figured I'd get that sled made real quick and just see what we got. I've got a bunch of melamine over here from an old bed that I took apart. So I'm just going to rip one 11 3/4 inches wide. All right, so now that I got that cut to width, I got to cut it to length. And there are a few things I want out of here, like that hole. I don't know if you could see this, but there's a big crack there. And there's another hole here. So I'm going to cut it a couple of times and just see what I can come up with here. Try to set that somewhere. Trash. All right, so that's cut, and basically we're just gonna glue this down like this. This isn't really under any stress at all, so I'm just using some cheap Harbor Freight super glue. I'm going to use probably the whole tube of it. And that is an entire tube of it on there. All right, so I got this thing shimmed way more than I thought I would need, but I did get it all level. So I'm just going around with my hot glue gun. See a little there? It's unfortunately black hot glue, but it works. I'm getting the shims glued into place first. Hopefully it'll stick to this melamine a little bit. And then I'll glue the board onto it. But yeah, once it's all done, I'll come back and just show you my glue location. All right, so I got it all planed. It's nice and flat. Sled worked okay. I ended up having to put some tape on it and gluing it to the tape. But it did go a lot smoother, a lot less snipe out of it using this. I can feel a very little bit right there, but not enough that would really make a difference. But it's getting cut off anyways. And on this end, where the snipe is here. But again, you can barely even see it. Could easily just cut that off too, and I'm going to. So I decided to make this one a little bit more crazy looking. So I cut it into 4 strips of 3. And then I staggered them a little. See how it goes purple heart, Padook. And then I just kind of staggered the middle line a little bit too. It extended each end too, so any planer snipe will hit towards the end and I'll still have room to cut it. But it's another day of glue ups, so I'll let that dry overnight and then I'll flip it off of this tape and let it probably dry throughout the entire day tomorrow. All right, so it's all planed and I just cut it on the miter saw down to its final size. And that's the pattern I'm going with here. I'm probably going to cut a chamfer along it, maybe even clean up this edge here because there's just a tiny little sliver of birch that probably shouldn't be there. So maybe I'll shave just a blade kerf off one edge. But yeah, it's pretty much done. That's how I plan to keep it. So yeah, then I'll just spend a ton of time rounding it over and sanding it and all that good stuff. It's going to be great. All right, so I totally forgot to take video of it, but I did shave that edge on the table saw, and I put a chamfer on it all the way down, both directions. Now I'm just kind of sanding it, 80 grit on the top for now, and then, you know, work my way up through 120, 180, 220, raise the grain, then, you know, up through the 220 again. But yeah, I hit it with a real small round over just on the top. I'm probably gonna have to do these corners too. They're a little sharp for me, but I may be able to just sand that too. We'll see. I don't have a vise out here, so hitting something that small with a router is difficult. But whatever. I'm just gonna keep sanding it, see if I can get it smooth enough, and call it a night. All right, so I got this whole thing sanded to 240. It is silky smooth. I also ran out of propane, so it's getting very cold out here. But I'm gonna just hit it with a wet cloth to make the grain raise a little bit. And then probably tomorrow I'll sand it with 240 again and hit it with the butcher block conditioner. But I don't know, I kind of like it. It's not perfect. It's definitely, I don't know, not as good as I wanted, but I like the way it came out so far. The chamfer looks nice too. It saves me from cutting handles in it. But I'm just giving this away. This isn't going to be anything I keep, so cool. I'm just going to raise the grain real quick. To do that, I just have some water in a little plastic container, and I just wipe over it with a towel. That's it. I don't soak it or anything. I just get it wet and let it dry. Gives you an idea what it'll look like finished though. So I'll keep doing that.